All right, today we're going to solve some problems that involve percents using proportions. So we've already spent quite a bit of time solving proportions, and we've talked a little bit about percents, so now we're going to kind of put it all together. So we're going to be looking at problems where we're trying to find either parts or whole of a percent or even the percent of a part and a whole. And to do that, we can use this proportion that we see right down here. So you might want to put a little star next to this box because this is going to be very important to you today. So when we set up our proportion, we always put the percent over 100 because obviously the percent is out of 100. And then we put the part over the whole. And when we look at these problems, sometimes the word is can be an indicator that we're looking at the part, and the word of can be an indicator that we are looking at the whole. And so those can be helpful words to look. But you're always putting the part over the whole, and then you solve it just like we solve other proportions, and you plug in x for what it is that you're trying to find. All right, so problem number 1 asks us, what percent of 72 is 54? So we're going to set up our proportion, and we always put the percent over 100. And in this case, the percent is what we don't know, so that's where x goes. And it wants us to find what percent of 72 is 54. So 54 is the part, 72 is the whole. And again, you see those words is and of that can help indicate for you what is the part and what is the whole. Now that we have the proportion set up, we can solve it using cross products. So we have 72 times x equals 54 times 100. So that's 72x equals 5,400. And then we're going to divide each side by 72, which, as always, you're welcome to use your calculator for. And we get x equals 75. So our final answer here is that x equals 75%. We can't forget that percent sign because, again, the question asked us what percent. So it's not just 75, it's 75%. Let's go ahead and jump down to number 3. So again, we're going to start by setting up a proportion. We always put the percent over 100. So in this case, the percent is 24. So we put 24 over 100. And it wants us to know what number is 24% of 200. So 200 is the whole. It goes on the bottom. We are trying to find the part, so the x goes on the top. Now we could use cross products, or this one we could actually solve by multiplying the top and bottom by 2. Since 100 times 2 is 200, 24 times 2 means that x equals 48. And in this problem, it's just 48. It's not 48%. We already have the percent. We're trying to find the number. Let's go down to number 5. Number 5 says 105 is 84% of what number? Okay, so we go to our proportion. We put 100 on the bottom, and in this case, 84 goes on top because 84 is the percent. Again, we can represent 84% as 84 over 100. It says 105 is 84% of what number? So in this problem, 105 is the part, and we are looking for what whole it is a part of. So there's my proportion. Now I'm going to use cross products to solve. So I have 84 times x equals 100 times 105. So 84x equals 10,500. Going to divide each side by 84. And x equals 125. And again, it's just 125. This is not a percent because it asks us what number. We already have the percent, so we're just finding the number. All right, let's go on to the next page and take a look at number 7. Number 7 asks, what percent of 35 is 7? So we're going to set up our proportion. We don't know the percent, so that's where x goes over the 100. It says what percent of 35, so that's the whole, is 7. That's the part. Now we can use cross products to solve. We have 35 times x equals 7 times 100. So 35x equals 700. I'm going to divide each side by 35. And I get x equals 20. So my answer is x equals 20%. Because again, this question asked what percent. So it'd be 20 over 100, which is 20%. Before we go any further, I also want to let you know that there are other ways to solve these problems. In fact, maybe you've been taught how to solve these problems using an equation, and that works great. A proportion is just one way to solve them, and the nice thing about proportions is we have so much practice solving proportions that once we set it up, that's oftentimes the hard part, and solving it then is a little bit easier since you've had so much practice with it. But you can solve these with equations as well, and it would work out the same way. All right, let's go on to number 8. Number 8 asks, what number is 15% of 300? So I'm going to set up my proportion. The 15 goes over 100 because that's the percent. It says, what number is 15% of 300? So 300 is my whole. It goes on the bottom. I'm looking for the part, so x goes on the top. I could use cross products, but this is another one where I could say that 100 times 3 is 300. So 15 times 3 means that x equals 45. Why don't you take just a couple minutes and try 9, 10, 11, and 12. right, as you finish it up, go ahead and check your answers with mine. Make sure you understand each of the steps and feel free to pause the video if you need to take more time to write these down. One thing I want to point out about number 12 is you notice that you got a repeating decimal. You're welcome to use the repetent sign above the 4s there, or you could round it to the nearest hundredth and write 0.44. Either way works fine. The other thing is, notice that number 12, and really other problems similar, is really exactly what you're doing when you figure out your homework score. If you got a 40 out of 90, you could type in 40 divided by 90, and then you're moving the decimal point over 2 spaces, which is the same as multiplying by 100. And so it's really the exact same steps that we've done in those types of problems, so that you see that similarity there. All right, let's try just a couple word problems. The nice thing about this proportion is the word problems don't become any more difficult. You just have to look and read carefully to figure out which is the part and which is the whole, so that you know which number to put on the top and which number to put on the bottom. So, number 13 says, of the 325 teams in the NCAA Division I women's basketball, 4% are in the Mid-American Conference. How many teams are in the Mid-American Conference? So, I'm going to put 4 over 100 because the percent always goes over 100. And now I need to think carefully as if 325 represents the part or the whole. Well, it says of that many teams, so I know that it is the whole, and I'm trying to figure out which part are in the conference. So I have the whole division. I'm trying to figure out what part are in the conference. And then once I have my proportion set up, I can use cross products to solve. So I have 100x equals 1,300. I divide each side by 100, and x equals 13. Now, because this is a word problem, we do need to have a label with our answer. So there are 13 teams in the Mid-American Conference. And the most important word for you to have there is teams, because that is what you're counting. All right, let's try the next one. An artist's collection of paintings includes 22 portraits. The portraits make up 40% of the collection. How many paintings are in the collection? So we always put the percent over 100, and now we need to determine if 22 represents part of the collection or the whole collection. Well, it says an artist's collection of paintings includes 22 portraits. So the portraits are only part of the collection, so therefore the 22 goes on top, and we're trying to find all of the paintings in the collection, so x goes on the bottom. And now I can use cross products to solve. So 40 times x equals 22 times 100. So 40x equals 2,200. Divide each side by 40. And we get x equals 55. So my answer is 55 paintings in the collection. So you can see that in these word problems, again, the key is you're trying to determine what is the part and what is the whole. Do I know the part or do I know the whole? Because that helps you see what it is that you are trying to solve for.